People don't like to be sold. They don't like salespeople. I don't like salespeople, and I'm a salesperson. If I'm a buyer and I want to go out looking for a home, it's a pretty stressful environment anyway, right? I mean, this is the largest purchase you're going to make in your life. And for most people, they can already do all of the homework that needs to be done around the area, the schools, the community, the amenities, the builder, the floor plan. They're doing all of that already. They just want to go out into the community and check out a house without being harassed by a salesperson.
You're listening to Build Up, the Homebuilder podcast, brought to you by ZGM.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Santana.
I'm a home building marketer, brand strategist, and your host of the Build Up podcast.
And I'm a digital marketer and the executive producer of Build Up.
And together, we love applying our expertise to the home building industry. Join us as we uncover industry insights, chat with colleagues, and explore exciting ways to push the home building world forward.
Jordan, today on the podcast, we talk a lot about what we want from sales, but we're two marketers. And so we've been saying for a long time, we need a kick-ass sales leader to join us in the podcast and give us their perspective. And we have found one. So we're so excited to have Chris Hartley on the podcast today. He is the Vice President of Sales at Hovnanian down in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks. I appreciate being called kick-ass. I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself. I don't think I've ever been described as kick-ass on a podcast, so thank you for that.
You came with high recommendations.
What a great way to start the episode, just to lighten the mood and celebrate our guest.
I mean, if you could start off a podcast with a cuss word, I mean, it's always okay.
We keep it pretty casual around here, maybe too much so, but no one's intervened yet, so we're just going to keep going.
Absolutely. Chris, I want to start off hopefully with what I think is a pretty simple question, but there's lots of different ways that home builders work their sales and marketing teams. Maybe it's one team, maybe it's two teams, maybe it's 1.5 teams. And I wanted to just get your sense of what is a sales team and what is a marketing team, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because, for the longest period of time, I had a title as Vice President of Sales and Marketing. And I truly believe that you cannot be great at both of those at the same time. It is such a marketer and a sales leader, two very different roles, two very different responsibilities. Marketing today is so complex and it's so... it takes a lot of intelligence and it takes a lot of analytics and it takes a lot of trying and focusing on new things where you can't spend the right amount of time focusing on the marketing side and spend the right amount of time focusing on the sales side. But they still have to work hand in hand. It's like peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and fluff, whatever your flavor is, right? But you have to have them work together. It cannot be oil and water. And far too often, especially as the market is starting to normalize, or as some people say, correct or dip, whatever you want to call it, too many salespeople are looking at their marketing teams and they're blaming the marketing team for not driving the right traffic. And then what happens is you have the marketing team that's saying, we're driving the traffic, you're just not converting what you're given. Or what traffic are you driving on your own? Or how is your conversion rate? Or what are you doing to move the sale forward? Right. So the best teams that you're going to have are those teams that work hand in hand to actually incorporate sales and marketing together as one and have a mutual respect for each other. The teams that are going to go through this next year that are oil and water and fight with each other are the teams that are not going to be successful. They're going to be the teams that are going to find their sales significantly drop way more than they should. The teams that work really well together, those are the companies that their market share is actually going to, I wouldn't say grow, but it's going to stabilize or mostly stay the same while others drastically lose market share.
That's a fantastic answer, and I love that. I think we would preach all day long that I think those two have to work together because you can't have success if those two are going in different directions. What's a little bit of your philosophy on interacting and engaging marketing and sales?
Yeah. So every sales rally that we have or a sales meeting, it depends on what part of the country you're from, we incorporate the marketing team to actually come in, and they're the first part of every sales rally. So they're actually the ones standing up in front of the sales team, and they're explaining to the team for the first 15, 20 minutes, everything that they're actually doing to drive traffic to the team. Now, it's not one of those sessions where the sales team then barks back and says, well, how about you do this? Or why aren't we doing this? Or so on and so forth. It's more the marketing team saying, this is what we are doing with the marketing dollars to drive traffic to you. So it's a more proactive approach to say, hey, this is what we're doing. Now that we're doing it and you're aware of it, what are you doing with it? Now, the individual visits, now the marketing team, so we have just in DFW alone, we have a vice president of marketing. She's been with the company nearly 30 years. She's incredible. And then we do have 2 marketing coordinators or assistants to her team. Our division, because it is so large, we do 800 homes a year. It's broken up into 2 different parts. One of her marketing assistants takes one side of the town and one takes the other. And so they actually go out into the communities very, very frequently, at worst case every other week, and actually go and they're checking the signage and they're checking the directionals and they're meeting with the sales team and they're walking competition and they're assisting in things that we ask the sales team to do as well. So everybody has the same responsibility, and we're doing a checks and balance on each other. And they actually have a report that they send into the sales managers that we can check to see that it is actually working the way that we want it to work. It just falls back to inspecting what you expect. And then when you have all of us working together, it's just a really seamless process because we have a mutual respect for the fact that we are working towards one common goal, which is to sell homes. And honestly, in today's market, we're working towards one common goal, which is to sell as many homes as we can so we don't have a reduction in force or we have to lay people off, because unfortunately, where the market is going and where the economy is at today, that is a very real circumstance for a lot of builders already. And we take a very big personal pride as both sales and marketing teams to say, hey, we want to be able to look each other in the face and look each other in the mirror and say, we did everything we could to ensure we got as many sales as we could to keep as many people employed as we could.
I don't know if people realize that aren't in the home building industry, the margins on homes. They're not as much as you'd think, right? And so I think one of the big reasons and sources of tension for sales and marketing teams comes from the immense pressure that they're both under, right? Like, I have worked with home builders on CRM and sales tool implementation for their sales teams and with the marketing teams at the same time. And they're both under the same pressure, but in different ways. And it really comes down to, I think, how the executive put their expectations on those leaders, but then also how the leaders work together. So do you have any tips for some of those sales leaders out there on how to better work with their marketing directors or how to better foster those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, for first and foremost, I would say just have an open and honest line of communication with each other. You mentioned a really great point that home building does actually have a very small margin percentage, right? A lot of people think it's such a big ticket purchase that the percentage of the return has to be astronomical, which in reality, it's very common to be single digits, right? So it's not like they're making 20, 30, 40% margins. Now, during some time of COVID, we did see margin escalate way higher than they ever have. But in today's market, it's back to the reality of, at the end of the day, single digits, right? Because you have to take out all your SG&A, you have to take out all your overhead. You have to really figure out, okay, this particular, our corporate office has a cost of XYZ every month. Each individual model has a cost of XYZ every month. It is having those conversations with the team to have them recognize these are the true costs of running this business. And we have to be effective in our communication and effective in our marketing dollars to drive the best result that we can for the best opportunity of grabbing that lead. But it also comes down, and what I love so much is the marketing team explaining to the sales team, every lead that walks through your door is X dollar amount. If you start to feel like every person walking through that door is a couple $100, it took a couple $100 to get that person into your model, you should be giving them everything you have from a presentation standpoint. You shouldn't be sitting in the chair and dismissing them or letting them tour the model themselves or not asking the proper questions, because it's a complete waste of everybody's time and everybody's money. So when people start to recognize and realize what everybody actually does for a living and how they're driving the end result, which is a sale and then thus a closing, it's just such a better partnership from there.
Totally. You mentioned that you were a bartender in college, and I was too. And I always think about sales and marketing as front of house and back of house. You know, the kitchen always says to the servers, all you have to do is talk to the people. That can be really hard. That customer relation's hard. But then, you know, all you have to do is cook a steak. Well, no, that took a lot of training, and there's a lot of orders up. It's stressful back there. So having that understanding of each other's jobs to ease some of that tension, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great way of putting it. Front of house, back of house.
Love it. Chris, I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that, there's these two teams that have to work so closely together. What are some of the things as a sales team that you do to support the marketing team or to, just sort of work with the marketing team?
This is going to sound so elementary and so dumb of a response or of an answer, but it is carting your traffic and truly understanding how they found you. Right? If you're not asking the question, how did you find us? How did you get to us? What brought you here today? Then marketing has no clue what attribution model actually drove the prospect to be in front of them. Now, we all know that it's many attribution factors that bring a client into the door, right? But it's actually digging deep and asking the right questions, because if you have a registration card, which in my opinion is still a very old school way of doing it, but a lot of builders still have a registration card, it's time tested, it works, right? Whether it's digital or printed, one of the questions is going to be, how did you find us? And it's going to say social media. It's going to say news. Hopefully it doesn't say newspaper, but I'm sure there's still some that say newspaper. It's going to say billboard, direct marketing, signage. Now, if you have signage on your registration card, you need to take it off immediately, because what most people do is they put the last thing they saw as their source of driving to the model. The last thing they saw is, of course, the signage to get to the model. But that's not what drove them there. The signage is the end result of actually helping you find the model home. So if I could give any suggestion, take signage off. Or be more specific with your signage. If it's a billboard, put a billboard, right? But signage as a generic answer, if you have it on your registration card, is probably going to be chosen 60, 70, 80% of the time. And that's not actually getting anything. Training your sales team to ask the questions on how a prospect got there is really going to be helpful. Or even say, we know that 99.99% of buyers start online, right? So why are we asking the very old school generic sales questions of what brought you here today? I'm assuming you found us online. What was it about your online experience that actually had you come visit us in person today? Okay, if you answer that question, more than likely that prospect already has the floor plan picked out, the interior selection they want, maybe even the lot they want. I mean, you can bypass so much of the discovery by just asking the simple question. And that's the best way that salespeople and sales teams can help. And then honestly, from there, it's updating their CRM. I mean, too many salespeople will put a lead in the CRM or will go in digitally and then they don't touch it. And we're watching these leads just sit in a category that is not an actual category, and they're not putting notes in the system, and they're not helping the marketing team. So it's a huge frustration for sales leaders and marketing leaders when the sales team doesn't recognize the importance of truly tracking the lead and inputting the notes in the CRM. Very simple to do, but it just does not usually work.
No, the last time I did a sales implementation for a CRM and a home builder sales team, I built a whole custom dashboard about 6 months in just to say, look at your peers. Those who have better CRM compliance also have higher sales. And maybe that's correlation, not causation, but do you want to find out on your sales numbers?
Right? I mean, it's so simple. I'm going to borrow that from you, by the way, how you worded that.
Please. You bring up a point that I wanted to touch on today, which is, obviously sales is still so necessary in this digital age, but it's different. It's different. And so what would you say are some of the, and we know that different home builders are at varying levels of digital sophistication. So from your perspective, what should good selling in the digital age look like, knowing that your consumers already know about you before they come in?
That's such an awesome question. So what I will say is the Canadians do it so much better than the Americans. And so where I will come with that is being that we judged nationals this last week, right? So we judged over 1,500 entries. The Canadians have embraced technology, and they've had embraced technology for years now. Whereas most of the American-based companies have just now started to truly embrace technology since COVID because it was a requirement or they were forced to utilize it. Where if you take a place like Toronto, for instance, which builds gorgeous high-rise condos, right? And like where the building and the brand is it's everything. It's sexy. It's where you want to be. It's where you want to live. And they create these events and this hype and the social media and the ads and you name it. They are building a place. They are place makers due to their digital workforce that they have working for them. Whereas the American side, we know it's necessary, but it's not utilized to the max potential that the Canadians use it for. And so you're selling, and I think part of that too is you build a high rise that has 1,000 units in it. It's going to take a couple of years to actually from sale to move in, right? And so you're selling something strictly off of paper. It's so funny because as a traditional salesperson would take a black and white floor plan, they would struggle to be able to have the buyer truly understand how to read that and visualize them in that space. Well, the fact that whether you're from Toronto or you're from New York City or you're from anywhere that has high-rise living, you have to create an atmosphere, typically from the digital side, utilizing technology to be able to showcase how it's going to feel, look, see, touch, whatever. Some instances smell. Like we actually had a we had a builder out of Canada, Minto Communities, actually send us a candle and hand soap that this is what your new home is going to smell like. How freaking awesome is that? Right? And so it's just thinking outside the box, but back into the digital side of the whole thing is that they're creating these opportunities for buyers to truly visualize themselves in that home to the point where like you can even give them a viewpoint of what it's going to be like on each individual floor as you go up. This is what it's going to look like outside of your actual window. I mean, that's incredible. We don't think about that enough on the new home side, but we really should be utilizing that. Anything from the way that the buildings are going to look to the amenities to, the photorealistic VR technology that's out there today, the gaming technology, there's no excuse not to be able to showcase how it's really going to look, touch, and feel. And too many builders are still behind in that. The Canadians are killing it. The Americans need to recognize that we're going to need to step up the game because consumers are going to expect it. They want to be able to truly shop online and then come to a salesperson when they're ready to make a decision.
And even on a more basic level though, Chris, how do you, we just touched on CRM compliance. And so I do feel like there's a bit of change management almost that goes into getting your sales team more tech savvy or tech forward. Are there any particular pieces of advice you would give, or are there any ways that you've found to make it a little bit easier to get your team a little more up to speed on some of these new things? Because I know sometimes salespeople feel like it's almost a hindrance to their being able to sell.
Sure. Well, you have so many of them that said, well, I did it this way before and it worked. Like they're creatures of habit in how they sell homes, right? So Mike Lyon, which is I don't know if you guys know him or not, but he owns and runs Do You Convert, and Do You Convert is probably the world's foremost trainers of online salespeople. And they obviously, if you're an online sales consultant, you utilize technology. And he has a really great saying, and the saying is this: technology will not replace the salesperson, but the salesperson that utilizes technology over the one that does not will win out, right? So in essence, technology is not going to replace you, but the salesperson that utilizes technology will replace the one that does not use the technology. When you create a culture that this is the way that we're doing things, this is not optional. Like this is a condition of your employment. This is how we work as a unified team. This is how we're going to do it. You're going to get better results. Now, I say that, but with caution. Salespeople are very hard-headed people. They believe that they are the smartest. They believe that they're the best. They believe that they know everything. Been there, done that, right? I've done the position. If you force anything on most people, there's going to be resistance, right? So anytime I introduce new technology, what I do is I go after the early adapters. I have a sales team of 21 people, right? So I'm going to focus on those that I know love the technology. And I'm going to introduce it to them first. And they're going to get to play with it. They're going to get to utilize it. They're going to get additional sales that the other teammates are not getting. And what's going to happen is they're going to start talking about the technology that they're utilizing. And those that would be the slow adapters or the non-adapters will be like, well, wait a second, what do you have? What are you using? Well, I don't have that. And then they come to you and they say, hey, I heard Ryan has video email, right? Let's just use an easy example. Video email has been around forever. Well, yeah, a video email is going to cost about $50 per month. are you going to utilize the video? I have no issue buying and paying for the subscription for video email for you, but historically speaking, that's not something that you would adapt to, that you're going to go after. But if you want it, I will totally do it for you, but you need to commit to it. And then at that point, they're like, well, yeah, if it's working for Ryan and it's getting him opportunities in sales, then I absolutely want it. And now it's their idea to incorporate the technology into their sales process rather than me forcing something. I get to the same result. I just get there with less kicking and screaming is in essence what's going to happen.
I'm stealing that. That's so smart. Like they're competitive people, and they are. And your insight onto how to kind of utilize that. God, that's really smart. I'm stealing that. Thank you.
I'm already stealing some from you, so it's only fair.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love that pull strategy where you make it exciting and make them want it, and then they come and find it and they use it because they're excited about it as opposed to being forced to use it.
Absolutely. And it's worked from unassisted entry on houses where you're putting a keyless entry on a house where they can call in and get access to it. It's worked with video email. It's worked with text message based system. I mean, literally, there is not a technology that I have not rolled out in the last decade that has not been rolled out in this manner. And we have yet to have one that has failed because they're adapting it themselves. It's not me forcing it.
Yeah, that's so smart. And you brought up unassisted entry, and I want to chat about that a little bit. We did an episode last season with UTour and the CEO of UTour. I'm thinking that you've probably rolled this out in some capacity, this unassisted entry, and talk to me a little bit about that. How's that gone, and how the salespeople adapted to it?
The first unassisted entry that I ever utilized was actually with a company called EnterNow, and EnterNow is still around, right? So you have some major players in the game. It's usually EnterNow or UTour are the two big ones, right? You have Rently if you use apartment complexes, things of that nature. It's so easy to me, right? Unassisted entry just makes sense. People don't like to be sold. They don't like salespeople. I don't like salespeople, and I'm a salesperson. But I would, and I'm an easy sell because I sell myself things, but like if I'm a buyer and I want to go out looking for a home, it's a pretty stressful environment anyway, right? I mean, this is the largest purchase you're going to make in your life. And for most people, they can already do all of the homework that needs to be done around the area, the schools, the community, the amenities, the builder, the floor plan. They're doing all of that already. They just want to go out into the community and check out a house without being harassed by a salesperson. Now, this isn't everybody. Some people enjoy actually working with salespeople, but the majority do not. And so they want to go and interact with the home. They want to see, touch, feel. They want to take their time. They want to sit and lean against the kitchen island, and they want to imagine themselves in that house. And most people can do that very well by themselves without a salesperson, right? And then when they are ready to ask questions or make a buying decision or move forward in any way, shape, or form, then they are going to engage the salesperson, because the salesperson is still the gatekeeper in selling the home, right? There's still a lot of things that the salesperson needs to tell them. But by having the unassisted entry, you're just giving them the ability to do things at their own speed, so to speak, right? Now, what I will tell you, the most successful companies that have EnterNow or UTour, you get a text message on your phone or an email that says somebody's in the house, right? So if you are a salesperson, I would be hopping in the car, stopping by and say, hey, I saw that you guys were here. I'm not going to interrupt by any means, but I just wanted you to know that if you have any questions, I'm just right down the street. Well, here's the craziest thing about this is that studies have been done to show anxiety levels of prospects in the home shopping process, right? Their anxiety level when they're walking into the sales center. So you asked me the question earlier whether I was pro sales center or not. I'm pro sales center to write the contract. I'm not pro center to actually sell the house. I think that's a horrible place to do business because your anxiety level is through the roof. Because a sales center, it's salesy. It sounds salesy, right? But if you are coming through and a prospect's coming through and you reach out to them and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm right down here. Their anxiety level when they're not in the model home and not in the sales center is so much lower because you are meeting them on a neutral playing field. So you are now a helpful advisor rather than a sales person, right? You're just telling me, hey, I saw your car. I just want to introduce you. My name's Chris. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any questions for me now, that's cool. If not, you guys enjoy your tour and we'll touch back up with you and we'll follow up with you and see how everything's going. And 9 times out of 10, that stop by and that easy communication ends up being a 30 to 45 minute conversation because now it's on different terms. It's on the buyer's term. It's not on the salesperson's term.
I love that so much. And, I knew we got the right person on the episode to talk about sales and marketing. And it's like, that is just, I love it so much. And it reminds me, I think it was actually the episode with Tom from UTour where he was saying that Sunday is the busiest day at the car dealership because that's the day they're closed. And people just want to go and look and see the cars. They don't want to be harassed. They don't want to be interrupted. They don't want salesiness. They just want to go and look at the cars. And that's why Sunday is the busiest day for the car dealership. And I think that's the same thing here.
Same thing, same philosophy. I mean, we're so used to as consumers buying everything without talking to people. I mean, think about how many times you have walked into a Nordstrom's. Let's just use Nordstrom as an example. And you walk in and you know for a fact you're looking for something. You are looking for a shirt or pants or whatever. And a salesperson walks up to you and says, "Can I help you?" What do you say? "No, I'm just looking." You're not just looking. You had better things to do than to go to Nordstrom's. I mean, some ladies really enjoy, but most dudes do not like to go shopping. If I go to Nordstrom's, it is to buy something. I'm not just going to hang out. I'd rather hang out doing a bazillion other things. But we still tell the salesperson, "No, we're okay." Right? That's why so many of us buy so many of the things we do online because we don't have to deal with people. The houses are the same way, right? And there just kind of goes to that whole buy online philosophy too. It's not perfected enough, in my opinion, for people to do. I think there's a lot of factors to still go into buying a house that I feel like you need to see, touch, and feel the space in which you're going to buy it. The buy online is a good concept, but it's not a car. A car travels with you. A house stays put. You can take the process up to a certain point, but you get my point on that. You just have to make the ease of buying a lot easier for people, and that's just what unassisted entry does. And a lot of builders now are actually doing it with their model homes, which is incredible. I mean, furnished model homes, they're putting obviously security cameras inside that, but they trust the system so well that says, "Hey, we will allow you to tour our model home at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. We already have your information. Anything happens, we know where to go looking for it." It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the new generation of sales is just building trust and educating. Like, I worked in retail briefly, and my question was always, when I approached people, was always, "Hey, let me know if you need any colors or sizes." Not, "Can I help you?" Not any of those questions that would prompt someone to say, "No, go away, you're a salesperson." Just, "Hey, I'm here if you need any sizes or colors." And that worked every time. And it's similar in home building, right? Which is people want education and they don't want to be pressured. So if you have more tools and answers to their questions, then you're providing value rather than just asking for something off the hop. Because you're right, it's scary.
That's such an awesome way of looking at retail. I'm 42 years of age, and I worked at Abercrombie when I was 16, right? Shows you how old I am. I worked from Abercrombie when I was 16 to 19, then I bartended. I never once thought about saying, "Let me know if you need help with these sizes or colors." Like, genius, because yes, we already know what we want. You're just saying, "I already know you're here to buy something. Just tell me if you don't find your size or if there's another color." You assume the sale is what you just did, which is great.
It's interesting because it's like people were like, "I don't need," and then they listen to the question again and they're like, "Oh, actually, thank you." Like, you could see their guard physically drop. And I think that's true in any sales. Like, I need education when I'm in the market for a product, but I don't need sales. So if you show me you're an educator and not just a salesperson, it kind of changes the power dynamic a little, I think.
Love that. See, I got 2 things from you today.
I think it's so smart too, because Chris, you talked about this early on, and I wholeheartedly agree. By the time someone's coming to the sales center, they've done the research. They know why they're there. They're there because, this is the short list of maybe 2 or 3 home builders, home models, something to that effect. So they're really so far down the funnel that they're not just browsing, they're looking for general information. They're looking for real hard details. And I think, to Santana's example, if you can come in and be in the mindset of, they're here for the hard details, how can I assist them with those hard details and hard answers? That is going to produce far better results.
All day long.
So how do you keep your team up to date on that information? Because I know the modern salesperson has a lot of things to do, right? Like, there's a lot of factors to consider. Their day's pretty full. So how do you keep them up to date on those new pieces of information that you need them to keep up on?
Well, I mean, it's just very quick sales rallies, right? It's having those meetings and explaining to them what's going on, the products that you're representing, the color palettes, the trends, the whatever it may be. But it's also giving them the tools to educate themselves, right? People want to learn on their own time. So, we tell our sales team, hey, these are the following webinars or podcasts you need to be listening to. This is where you can get really great news. This is where you should avoid getting your news. Like so many times, the consumer is the expert when they come through the door, but often the information that they have may be inaccurate. What we also want to make sure that we're teaching our sales team on those too is not becoming feature dumpers, right? It is the last thing you ever want is for you to become a product feature dumper where you're like, this is a GE appliance and it does the following thing. And it's like, you have to understand the needs of the consumer before you start just spitting out product knowledge. You need to be the knowledgeable one, but it's one of those things that honestly and truthfully today, oftentimes our consumers are equally as intelligent as our actual salespeople in the sales office because we arm them with so much information online that they already know the majority of the things they need to know. Right now, you will still have those very analytical buyers that will ask the questions, tell me about the argon rating of your windows. Tell me what the R value is of the walls and the ceilings. And you need to be able to answer that question. And that's just general construction knowledge or spending time with your team and doing that. But most of that in regards to the learning is wanting to learn the information, right? If I'm going to sit you in a product offering with 21 salespeople and try to explain to you all these different types of things, most people probably just shut it off. But if you say, this is where you can get the information and this is what you should do with your construction manager, let's do this, then they're going to retain it. It's significantly better.
One of the questions I wanted to ask is specifically about the sales center. So what makes a good sales center? Like if you've got a marketing audience here, what in your mind, in your opinion, are the keys to a great sales center?
This webinar or this podcast is so well timed because literally just coming back from California last night for the National Association of Home Builders and judging 1,500 entries for the nationals. One of the categories is sales centers. One of the categories is welcome centers, right? So we got to see hundreds of sales centers and what makes a sales center work. Most of the time, a sales center is placed inside of a garage. Okay, well, that makes sense, right? Sometimes if it's a high rise, they're placed inside of these offsite buildings and they're gorgeous and large and fancy and all sorts of stuff. There's so many different types of sales centers out there, right? But we see the same type over and over and over. It's how it's executed to get the consumer to actually interact in a non-threatening, non-sales situation, right? It's more about, as Santana said, it's more about educating the buyer, right? When I first started in the business, I had a phenomenal VP of sales, and she said that we are three things. We are a counselor, an educator, and a guide. So I'm a big believer that if you are those three things, counselor, educator, and a guide, that's what your sales center should do. It should give you some information that you cannot get online. Not to say you should gatekeep anything from putting it on your website, but it may be able to give you some more information that's fun facts about the neighborhood, or these are school activities that they do, or whatever it may be. It's going to want to be an inviting space that fits that buyer profile group. So for instance, we did this phenomenal judging on this building called the Pemberton. It was at 33 Yorkville, and this building is gorgeous. I mean, the homes are $3.5 million and up. The look of a $3.5 million buyer and what they expect from their sales center is high class, luxury. I want to feel like I've arrived, right? Now, then we also did some attached product that was 800 square feet that was in the 300s, which hard to believe that it's still that expensive when back in the day it used to be in the 100s, but in the 300s, that sales center in that environment is significantly different than a $3.5 million buyer. You put somebody that's a $300,000 buyer in a $3.5 million sales center, and they're going to feel very uncomfortable and very unwelcome, right? So you have to make your sales center fit the buyer profile that you're working in. I equate it to this, and I love this. I am a big believer that you should drive a vehicle that matches the consumer that's buying in your community. So let me give you an example. When I first moved to Texas, they threw me inside of a sales center for 6 months. And that was before they had me managed. They said, we just want you to understand Texas because Texas buyers are different. Every buyer, no matter where you're at, are the same. I've done this in 5 different markets. Buyers are the same thing. I don't care if you're from Texas or California or Canada or whatever. People are people. Now, what's interesting about this is that I worked for a very high-end builder when I first got here. Some would say snooty. Right? And we had a realtor event. And I had at the time a Toyota 4Runner. I loved my Toyota 4Runner. And the valet came up with my 4Runner, and one of the salespeople, and I'll never forget her name, but I'm not going to mention it, goes, "You drive a 4Runner?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love my 4Runner." She goes, "Have you not seen what everybody else drives that works for this company?" And I said, "Oh, I'm well aware of what you all drive. But do you know what price point I sell in?" And she's like, "What?" And I said, "I sell homes in the mid twos." Now, granted, this was 2010, 2011, right? So it was a while ago. And I said, "Why would I drive a $100,000 Escalade when I'm selling a mid $200,000 price point? Nobody in my community is driving Escalades. Everybody in my community is driving 4Runners." So I then have a sense of commonality with that buyer coming through the door. "Oh, you got a 4Runner too? I love this thing," right? If I have an Escalade, they're like, "Hey, I'm in the Escalade." It's just very different. Same with your sales center. Your sales center has to make your buyers feel welcome and like they want to hang out there. It can't feel like they're being sold. It can't be a sales center. That's why so many companies call them welcome centers, right? Because they're just trying to change the name. I don't give a crap what you call it. It needs to feel like whatever it is, right? If it's a welcome center, make them feel welcome. If it's a sales center, call it what it is, because it's a sales center. Nobody's going to want to hang out there. But just adapt your sales environment to the buyer profile that's coming through the door. It has to match.
The amount of psychology that goes into sales and marketing is wild, right? Like what you're saying is you're creating like in-group psychology essentially, because people are buying into a community and they want to think that they're going to fit into that community. And if some snooty sales guy comes down from the hills to sell them a home, are they going to feel comfortable there? So you're so right. It's like creating community in every touch point, but the communities are different.
Very much so. I mean, you got to think there's buyers of all price points, right? It just makes perfect sense. Like if you're in a community like the community I live in here, it's got an amazing amenity center, it's got a bar, and it's got a restaurant, it's got an elementary school on site. Like it's gorgeous, right? Absolutely love it. We sell to the family buyer, right? I'm not trying to hit the $3 million high earner that's living in downtown Dallas. That's not my buyer. So why would I make any of my imagery or my sales be to that buyer? My buyer is the kids, right? So I'm selling to families. The main attraction in this neighborhood is the kids. Okay. So we are showcasing all things children. We're showcasing there's 287 events in the neighborhood every year. That's what we're selling.
You've got experience, working with marketing teams, working with sales teams that work with marketing teams. What, in your opinion, are the keys to a fantastic marketing team?
I'm just like thinking of all the things and all the marketing teams I've worked with. I would say that the number one thing is that they need to educate, and I'm looking at this from a sales side. The marketing teams that I work with, I want them to educate me on all things that they are doing. I want them to educate me on what's working. I want them to educate me on why they did a certain thing. I want them to educate me on the demographics and the buyer profiles. And this is, a salesperson should know this too, but if you're selling a home in the mid fives, that, we know as marketers and we know as salespeople, they need to make an income of X, Y, Z. I want to know that my marketing team is going out and attracting the buyers that make an income. Like, how do you do that? Are you geofencing? Are you AdWords? Like, whatever it may be. So I know that we're working on the same side and same team. So I think what makes a really awesome marketing team is a marketing team that educates their sales team on what they're doing to help them. Right. And I think with that, too, is the sales team has to show an equal amount of respect and appreciation for that marketing team, because far too many times, and this is within the last recent years, salespeople are making stupid amounts of money and they forget that how much effort and work goes on behind the scenes to make them make that stupid amount of money. The last couple of years has been phenomenal for salespeople income wise, but everybody else behind the scenes, our pay didn't change. The marketing team's pay didn't go up threefold because the sales team's commission went up threefold. They're still getting paid the same, but they're having to work just as hard as they ever were before.
We've given you this wonderful platform, and I want to know if there's anything that you feel like, is there anything you would want to tell marketers? You've got the stage. What do you want to tell a captive audience of home building marketers, if anything?
I would say, so I do a lot of public speaking, and one of the things that I get asked to speak on so much of is the customer experience journey. There's a saying that I had on the large sign at my last company that said, "We are no longer in the home building business, we're in the experience business," right? It is a marketer's job to give that experience. It is a marketer's job to create what that customer experience journey looks like. It's their job to get credit for the journey. Now, it's the job of the salesperson to put the journey in place, but I really believe that it's the marketer's version or vision on what that journey should look like. And I think the easiest thing is to, and I did this in front of a huge group of CEOs not long ago, as I said, if you're buying a home, the easiest question to ask your entire operations team is what are the minimums or what are your expectations? If you were to go buy a home, what would you expect as a minimum to the person you're buying that home from? And the marketing team needs to sit in there and hear this, because it's very simple, but they can get so many nuggets. And we don't ask generally the people in our own teams, what do you expect out of this, right? We take for granted what we do every single day because we do it every single day. But the average person buys a new home once or twice in their lifetime, right? It's a scary thing. So, I would say to marketing teams is what's going to win or lose in the future is going to be how well you tell the story. And the story needs to be told a lot better than what is being told.
You're speaking my language, Chris. We talk a lot about, brand story and brand purpose and what are you doing here beyond just, everybody builds a house. Like that's the commonality amongst all of us. But why do you build a house? Why do you build it that way? And the word that I've been using this season, because I'd like to come up with words that reflect the advice of the season, is consistency. Like you've got to tell your story, you've got to tell it consistently, build brand trust, build brand awareness. And that's how you're going to set yourself apart and find your customers.
And there's so many brands. If you think outside of home building, there's so many brands that we all love because they stand for something or they tell a story. Home building should be the same way.
100%.
Let me throw this out there. There's a home builder out there, and I know her name is Alyssa Titus, and she's in charge of marketing for Shell Brothers Homes, and it's in the East Coast, right? It's in like Pennsylvania and Delaware. They do such a phenomenal job selling the story as to why you want to buy a Shell Brothers home. Right? One, they did an entire marketing campaign built around their employees in a local magazine holding balloon numbers of how long they've been working there. Now you think, well, what does that have anything to do with selling a house? The answer is simple. If they've done an entire campaign about the fact that people have worked there for 9 years, 18 years, 22 years, it shows that people love the company, they care, and they take personal pride in working there. As a home builder, I want to go work for some place that has employees that have been here 20 plus years because they give a shit, right? I don't want to go someplace that they're recycling their people every 6 months and I have no idea who's building my house because they don't care. The people and the employees at Shell Brothers care, and they worship the logo that's on their chest, that's on their hat, that's on their hard hat, whatever it is. They have a tremendous amount of pride. Not only that, but they do Shell Village every year, which they put on this amazing Christmas village. They get 100,000 visitors in, and they charge nothing for it. They take donations, they donate it to charity. Like they have literally immersed themselves into the community. It's to the point where, like, if you want to buy a house, your first goal that you want to buy, if you can afford it, is the Shell Brothers house. Everything else is secondary only if you can't afford a Shell, because they've done such a great job building the brand and building the story, right? Every marketer should go study Alyssa and Shell because they do a phenomenal job. And I think it's SCHELLE is how you spell Shell Brothers. And take a look at it because they just do a phenomenal job with it. And a lot of builders do, but they definitely stand out as somebody that tells a great story.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love just being integrated and going beyond just, there's too much home builder marketing, which is just, here's our house and here's the price and here's a pretty picture of the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. Everybody does that. You can't stand out. You can't win doing that. You have to stand for something more deeper and really own that position. So that's fantastic. I love it. We're going to go check them out for sure.
Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I know with confidence that our listeners definitely got a lot out of this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been awesome.
Jordan, my takeaway for this episode, I'm literally just going to be parroting back to you something that Chris said during the episode. But to me, it was mind blowing. In digital transformation and in any type of internal change that happens in a company, we talk about change management. We talk about change mindset, all these change management things. But he put it so simply, which is find out what motivates your team and then do it that way. So the way that he pointed out, salespeople are competitive. That's what they're known for. That's why they do sales. That's why they're good at it. They like winning. And so if you roll the team out to people that you know will handle it well and create that sense of FOMO, the change manages itself. And that's so brilliant. So just that little tweak of like what motivates your team, God, it's just so smart. So my takeaway is just parroting back that gem of knowledge that Chris gave to us.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. That was a good piece of knowledge and a good way to deal with that change, because it's so true. Like in builders that we deal with all the time, we need more from the CRM, we need more from this, we need more from that, but it's just sort of like, here it is, here's some training, now do it. But there's not really like why should I do it, or why am I getting excited about doing it? Yeah, Santana, I think my takeaway from this episode is, and I think it's so interesting because it comes from VP of sales and a salesperson who you might not think would be the person to be espousing this point of view, but the storytelling aspect, like we talk about it so often, brand purpose, brand story, like I feel like that is so important, and I feel like it's so lacking in the home builder industry. Like if you have a real legit good story and you're not telling it, you are missing out on a huge opportunity. Like everybody is out there in the market and they're saying we're quality, we're innovation, all of these things that don't mean anything, and they're all saying the same thing. And if you've got a real unique actual story that you can tell, that's disrupting, that's cutting through, that's how you're going to get customers. So I love that Chris brought it up, especially because of the fact that he's a salesperson. And I think it's so important. And that's what we want to be doing. We want to be marketing home builders through storytelling.
Totally. I mean, listen, at a certain price point, product is standard. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get me, like, if I'm not buying a multi-million-dollar home, then I'm not comparing just on, product should be basically very similar in quality at a certain price point. That's just how the nature of crowded industries work, right? And so what is the thing selling me? And you're right, it's story. So absolutely.
This has been Build Up, a ZGM podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and subscribe on your favorite listening app. Thanks to Shelby, our editor, Santana, our executive producer, Scott for our original music, and you for listening along. Be sure to follow us on your favorite social platform at Build Up Podcast.